Hi, welcome to SBRtv. I'm Peter Loshak. This is the SBRtv Experts Roundtable for the NFL. We are going to preview NFL Week 4 today, Week 4, and we have once again joining us Scott Kellen from SixCentSports.com and SBR contributor John Ryan. Thanks, guys, so much for being here once again.
Thanks for having us.
Peter.
All right, Scott, the first game that I want to talk about is one of the games you wanted to bring up. Now, I'm interested to see what you have to say about it because I sense a lot of value on one side. That's Minnesota, Kansas City. Kansas City is, 1-point home underdog. The Vikings are 0-3, but all their games have been close, and they've had double-digit leads in the second half of every game. I think they've outscored their opponents like 54-6 in the first halves of their first three games or something like that. Kansas City, they're 0-3, but they were with two blowouts. Kansas City's had a terrible run defense so far this year. The Vikes have had a great run defense. Of course, McNabb's their quarterback, and as we all know, he's kind of a loser. But I think that, given all the pluses for the Vikings and all the minuses for KC and the short line, I'm thinking of making a huge bet on Minnesota -1 as a road favorite. What do you think, Scott?
I don't know about the huge bet part. They are 0-3, a terrible team. But
Right.
I agree with you on this, Peter. I think they are the better team here. Kind of ironically, in some ways, these teams kind of mirror themselves in that they're both horrible passing the ball, although Minnesota's slightly better from a horrible standpoint, if you will. And then defensively, they're actually probably pretty similar so far defensively. But, the one biggest difference I see in is the Vikings have been running the ball extremely well. They're averaging 5.8 yards a rush against teams that are only allowing 4.4. But Kansas City is averaging, they're about average rushing the ball. They're averaging 4.6 yards a rush against teams that give up 4.6, which kind of makes them average. So I think the Vikings run the ball better. They actually qualify in a system that's 129, 58, and 5, as long as they're favored by 2 or less points. And last week, that same situation won for us as well. Last week, just looking, I don't have my notes here in terms of who we had on that, but it's a very good system that won. And I just think the Vikings are a much better team. And if you look at Kansas City, they've lost 3 of their huge playmakers this year. Obviously, they lost Jamal Charles a couple weeks ago, their best running back and maybe their best player on offense. They lost their tight end, I think, before the season even started. It was very good. And then they probably lost their best defensive player a couple weeks ago in Eric Berry. So they're down a lot of good players. The Vikings got back Kevin Williams on the defensive line last week. And, as you said, they played great in the first half and just completely fell apart for whatever reason in the second half. But I think they're a much better team than Kansas City, more physical team, and I expect them to win this game.
Right. All right. So you don't endorse a huge bet, but you do endorse a moderate-sized bet, right?
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
And all right, and then I have 2 just quick questions just to get your take on it, not too in-depth, but why is, first of all, then Kansas City such a short line, such a small underdog? And second of all, what's up with Minnesota's second half problems? Maybe the answer in this game is just take them in the first half, just like you should have done in their first 3 games.
It could be. I think to address the second question, first of all, the one thing you have to start wondering about is, are they just simply getting out-coached at halftime? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then that's a bigger issue, than anything else. So, I think you have to continue to look at that a little bit. But if they're getting out coached, that's going to be a serious issue, and it's going to be tough to cover games with them going forward. The first one can't. I don't know. Kansas City's still pretty good home field. The Vikings are not a great team. McNabb has looked horrible.
Right.
There's probably some respect from that standpoint, but at the end of the day, I still think the Vikings are a better team. They've got Adrian Peterson, who's a hard physical runner, and I would expect him to do some damage on the Kansas City defense.
Right. I hear you, and I agree. John Ryan, what do you think of this line? You agree with us?
I actually am thinking that it probably is not Kansas City is probably the bet. Mm-hmm. Both teams are 0-3, obviously, but the betting flows. The public is clearly on Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Close to 75% of all the bets being made right now are on Minnesota. The line is not moving dramatically. I guess it's gone from pick to -2, which means I think that's just a whole pocket of small bettors jumping on Minnesota. So no offense to you, Peter, you pick them with the best of them, but this time I think I'm on Kansas City. And I'll give you a nice little system, too, to consider with Kansas City. This system's hit 74% winners over the last 10 seasons, and it works against Minnesota's ability to outrush opponents. You're going to play against road favorites that outrush their opponents by 40 or more yards per game on the season, and after a game where they outrushed the opponent by 100 or more yards in the last game. That system is 36-13 against the number. So my enthusiasm would be a little tempered if I was liking Minnesota right now.
All right, my enthusiasm is tempered, but I still kind of agree with Scott, and I still like it.